don't just think about the tactical pieces there. Also think about your energy. What parts of this really just exhausted me? What parts could be leveraged? Like, I would still love all of this if somebody else was handling this aspect. Or, you know what? You might learn that you didn't like that at all. You felt icky every time you showed up in that space, or every time you had to reach out to somebody and ask them to promote it, or whatever the thing is. You check back in with the energy.
Welcome to Tried and True with a Dash of Woo, where we're all about mixing tried and true strategies that actually work with the magic of manifestation and the science of programming your unconscious mind so that you walk away feeling integrated, inspired, and aligned. I'm Renee Bowen, certified life and business coach, professional photographer, middle-aged wife, and mom to now 3 grown kids. I've built 2 multiple 6-figure businesses with 0 business training by digging in, learning the methods, and now I'm here to pass them all on to you. From photography and business strategies to energy healing, human design, and the basics of manifestation, we cover it all here. I'm here to help you embrace your multi-passionate brains and lean into the fastest and most efficient ways to reach your goals, whatever they may be. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, or maybe you're just here for the woo-woo, let's dive in and explore all the exciting ways to take your life, business, and self-improvement to the next level. Thanks for joining me, and get ready to be inspired. Welcome back to the show, guys. Today, I have a guest that you're going to love. Her name is Jamie Milam, and she has a really amazing story. So she's been on her own since she was 15 years old, overcame a drug addiction, and when she learned basically that she was going to become a mother at 19, she's lived a self-reliant life filled with pressure to build a better life for her and her son. Her figure-it-out mentality helped her rebuild her life from a single Rubbermaid tote, and went on to build 3 businesses that she runs today. She learned that strategic systems were instrumental in her financial success, but it was learning to practice deep self-awareness that allowed her to break free from pressure and learn to value herself so deeply that she could navigate challenges with feelings of peace and align her strategies with her true self. And now she utilizes this powerful tool in all areas of her life and is on a mission to help others do the same. As an alignment coach, she helps female entrepreneurs develop a practice of self-awareness so that they can break free from the pressure and overwhelm and experience peace with a strategy that is aligned with their true needs and desires. She is a perfect fit for this podcast, and we totally have so much in common. So this conversation is going to be super inspiring for you guys. I know you're going to get a lot out of it. So let's get into this conversation right now. So I am so excited about this conversation, Jamie. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm super excited.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Renee. I'm excited to be here.
Good. Yeah, we're going to get into some really cool stuff. I kind of want to start off at the beginning though, because this is part of your story. And I think this is such an interesting part of your story. So this journey of overcoming drug addiction at 19 to becoming this wildly successful entrepreneur is nothing short of inspiring. So can you share with us the pivotal moment that made you decide, okay, it's time to turn my life around?
Oh, yeah, that's super easy. I mean, the pivotal moment was, so I'd been living on my own since I was 15. And then when I was 19, I found out that I was pregnant and I was going to be a mom. That was pivotal. For me, that was the moment that there is no other choice here. This human being does not deserve the life that I've been living, and really decided right then, you've got to change everything. And I had to rebuild my entire life from a Rubbermaid storage tote, one of those big blue storage totes, that you pack Christmas stuff in. I had picked one of those up at a Goodwill so that I could get a few little baby clothes because I was living in a hotel. And really from there, it was a matter of, okay, how can I improve 1%? Even if that means I have to go live with people that, my only network at the time were other drug addicts, but it was still even if I'm living there, I have to create some boundaries and set some expectations. And I didn't realize at the time that that's what I was doing. But looking back, I'm glad that I did it. And it was just a matter of improving a little bit as much as I could each time, like each day, each year, each season. So it was really coming from that place.
I love that you kind of mentioned that, like, you kind of do what you can with what you have, right? Like that was your network, that was your life. And so you did know that, okay, yes, this is that pivotal moment. I gotta do this. But it's also, I think so many, especially entrepreneurs, we kind of feel like, oh, I want to do this big thing and I have to do all of it like right now. But it's those small incremental steps really that lead you to those places. And so I love that you sort of highlighted that, you know what I mean? Like you had these little figure it out moments, along the way, and you kind of just had to figure it out as they presented themselves to you. So I think that's a really good point, because don't you find that a lot of people, because I know that you're in the coaching space as well. Do you find that a lot of people kind of come to you and they're like, I want this big thing and it has to happen right now?
It's so funny. I was having this conversation just a little bit ago, actually. What I found is a lot of people live in this should space. And what I mean is I'll have clients that come in and they tell me, okay, I want to make $200,000 this year. And I'm like, okay, perfect. I love that. Like, tell me why. Like, what are we funding? Do you know how many units? Because some entrepreneurs are going to be way more organized and systematized and have their numbers in play, and some will not. And oftentimes I'm working with entrepreneurs that are within the first, 3 years of their business or so. And so they may not have actually put those foundational aspects into play. And so what will happen is we get really like specific. I mean, we're breaking down your personal expenses. I mean, down to like pet food expenses, Netflix, all the things, your business expenses, and then of course your life by desire, because we're here to, not live to work, but work to live. And so what are your bigger goals? And let's break that down. And then you'd be surprised how many times we find out that even with your life by desire, we may only need to make 147K or whatever. And so, I'll say, all right, now, how are we going to spend this other 53K? And if you can't envision it, and if it's not painful enough to you that if you don't hit those goals to achieve those things, because oftentimes psychologically, maybe it's 47,000 out of that 147 that is going to fund your life by desire. And so psychologically, newer entrepreneurs will tell themselves, okay, well, as long as I hit 100K, then, I can survive business and personal life. Right. And so now it's like, if you can't spend that other 53,000 and it's not going to be painful enough, well, guess what? The numbers are going to feel like pressure that you can't attain. And so we have to keep working our way to these numbers rather than living in this like should aspect of having it all or hitting these numbers that, they see on social media, like, make 500 in your first year. Like, well, do you know what that person was doing before their first year of 500K? Like, did they have, 10 years of sales experience or whatever it is in that space before they did this one thing? So I think that you've got to have some awareness around that aspect too.
Absolutely. And I definitely see that as well. And I also, and you too, I'm sure, see that those numbers are important. Like a lot of people, you're right. There's like these just arbitrary things that they see online, or, a lot of it in the coaching space nowadays, like make $100,000 a month or this, that, and the other. We don't know those person's habits, the things that they are putting into place, all of that stuff. But some people, they kind of feel like they should be making this amount of money. And then they realize that's way less than I actually need to live on too, right? That's the other side of it too. I just had a client this past week, a photographer who is going from, kind of all inclusive stuff to selling product. And that's a really big step for a lot of photographers. And it's really scary. And that's one of the things that she was talking about, is she was like, this whole time I thought I just needed to make like 60,000, but I did my numbers after we went through everything. And she's like, I kind of need to make 100,000. I was like, yeah. So that kind of reality check too is like super important as well, right?
Well, and that's why even with our sheets, like we factor in like how your taxes,
Yep.
like that you're gonna have to pay as a self-employed person, because obviously we want you to set that aside too. And a lot of people mistake that. Or I've also found people who will draft out their business expenses, and I'll ask, did you go through your credit card statement? Did you go through the bank account? Because I can guarantee you that there's some shiny object syndrome in there that accounts for maybe another $400-500 a month at minimum sometimes. And so it is exactly that. You know, when I first hired my very first business coach, I remember very distinctly her asking me, you know, how many units did I want to sell that year? And when I told her the number, she's like, okay, why? And I said to her, I said, I mean, I don't know. That's what they tell us that we should be aiming for as an individual realtor, you know? So that would give me an indication that I'm ready to hire an assistant or whatever. And she said the same thing. Is this going to fund? Because I was coming from an executive position in medical sales. I was the breadwinner in my house. I was making a high six-figure number. And she said, so is that going to fund your actual needs? And I said, oh, that's a great question. And so I ended up doing this exercise as well. I've tweaked it since, but when I did this exercise, I had a question that I had to decide. And for me, in the season that I was at in my life, I had to decide, do I want to put all of my expenses, like my household expenses, or do I want to put like my half, because I was married at the time? And I told myself, you know what? I'm going to put my entire household expenses, because I want to be in a position that if my marriage were to fall apart, because newsflash, it was rocky, I'm since divorced, but like if my marriage is going to fall apart, I want to know that I can fund my life so that my son and I can continue on with our lifestyle. And if we don't get a divorce, well, then great. Now we have so much more extra money that we can do a whole lot of other things for. But I know that money will not be a factor in making a decision around, do I stay or do I go?
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a huge awareness exercise for me to see what I was really working towards, so that I was committed to the activities, so that I was in alignment with the activities, and I was, you know, self-disciplined to get that work done every single day.
I am such a big proponent of that too, because there's been several years where I'm the breadwinner. My husband's an actor and a writer. So, I mean, he's on strike right now. So, this is one of those things where it's like, I'm super passionate about women, especially hearing this message. I mean, I've got a daughter. I work with a lot of young teenage girls and young women. Look, you don't have to go out there and, hustle. Like, I'm not like, I'm not talking about girl bossing your way too close to the sun here, but it is so important for you to know that you can rely on yourself. And when you have that sort of confidence, like nobody can take that away from you. And it's not something, like, honestly, when I look back, it wasn't something that I necessarily, I think, as a young person really made a goal out of. Like, it wasn't something I thought about a lot, because I really wasn't that super focused in my 20s. Like, I was just having a good time. Let's be honest. I was the quintessential little party girl in LA. And, I got pregnant as well, but I was 28. So I was very much like, oh, okay, it's time to actually get serious about life. It wasn't until I formed my own business and started making money, and then also had a very unpredictable, my husband's so great at what he does, but it is a very much a feast or famine, sort of lifestyle. And then all of a sudden we had 3 kids under the age of 2, basically, because we had twins. And it was like, oh, okay, I actually have to do something that I love, and I want to do something that I love, and I want to make my own money. And then when I started realizing that I can make money out of that passion, I was like, oh, this is where it's at. Like, that's the good stuff. So I love that conversation. And I definitely wanted to highlight that as well. But I want to kind of talk about this concept that you speak on a lot, this determined AF, purposeful planning, right? What does that mean to you? And how can female entrepreneurs implement that in their lives?
Yeah. So, I mean, we've kind of touched a little bit on it in terms of getting really dialed in on, okay, so how much money do I need to make or whatever, right? But I really want to take it back to the real foundational level, which is self-awareness. Because if we don't have self-awareness, then we cannot purposefully plan a dang thing. at least not in a manner that is going to be in alignment with us. So what I mean by this is when we slow down enough to really pay attention to our bodily reactions to things, our energy around the activities that we're doing, what's draining us, what's lighting us up, what things, which that can lead to decisions like, what do I want to leverage? What do I just want to nix completely? What am I doing in my business that is the shoulds that I'm seeing everywhere else versus what really resonates with me and that I can be excited about to really pour into other people. So what I've found is systems and strategies and purposeful planning, y'all, that built so much professional success for me. I mean, as a 19-year-old who is a single mother that, starts to have to work two different jobs, decides to go back to college. So I'm managing a full-time college schedule, which in order to do a full-time college schedule, when you have a toddler and you're working two jobs, that means that you take an online class, you take a night class, you take a class in between on your lunch hour or between shifting between jobs, which also means you have to communicate that schedule with everybody involved. There's so many moving parts. It's going to change each semester. So you have to plan in a very strategic way to make that happen. So all of this has been a skill that I had been learning and practicing since age of 19. But it wasn't really until, let's be real, COVID, there's this awareness around, God, am I actually super happy doing all of the things that I'm doing in all of my spaces? And really, it was a huge eye-opening experience because it highlighted the downfalls in my marriage. And so that led me into a relationship with a therapist. And I was able to start to unpack a lot of that trauma. And what I was learning was that by becoming way more in tune with myself and recognizing, okay, what lights me up? What are my needs? What are my desires? What are my boundaries? Right? Because these things are very real. And I think especially as women, what happens is we are very quick to brush them under the rug. We should just minimize it. We should be able to do this. We should be able to do that. We should be able to do it all. And I shouldn't be so upset with him about this, or I shouldn't let this get to me. But the truth is that the more that we brush that under the rug, the more that we're teaching and training our brain that our needs and desires are not worthy, that they're not of value. And I'll tell you right now, the moment that you can learn to recognize and acknowledge and validate your emotions, no matter how logical they seem, the more that you are showing yourself that you're going to honor that. Because once you're aware of it and you consciously choose to ignore it, that's not going to feel good. You're not going to want to do that. So when you start to honor it, you're going to start to value yourself in ways that other people can't. You're going to start to expect that other people do value you, at least into a way that makes you feel like you're in alignment with them, right? And then additionally, you start to, if you can learn how to communicate effectively these wants and needs and these boundaries and these triggers and even the excitement things, and you start to recognize what all of those things are, you get to apply that to every area of your life. Not just your personal relationships, but your business relationships, like who you hire, how you like to be communicated with, how you want them to expect for you to communicate with them. There are so many different aspects of this purposeful planning. And so then you get to dial it down to even very nitty-gritty aspects. So if it's a new launch, if you're doing an event, if you're planning a campaign, you can now check in with yourself. If you take some intentional time to give attention to what is the strategy? How are we going to launch this? Does that feel good? And you know what? Sometimes we don't know what we don't know until we know it, until we try it. And that's okay. So maybe you think that planning this event or this specific launch is a good idea. Somebody else has done it. Sounds like good. It feels like it is going to fit for you, but we don't know yet. So what I encourage you to do is after the campaign or after the event, have a feedback form. I mean, you should anyways, right? We want to check to see what was our target budget? What was our actual budget? What was our target number of leads? What did we actually get in? What was our successes and where's our area for opportunity? Don't just think about the tactical pieces there. Also think about your energy. what parts of this really just exhausted me? What parts could be leveraged? Like, I would still love all of this if somebody else was handling this aspect. Or, you know what? You might learn that you didn't like that at all. You felt icky every time you showed up in that space, or every time you had to reach out to somebody and ask them to promote it, or whatever the thing is. You check back in with the energy. So that way you can start to become more aware around the activities in your business to find out if they're in alignment for you. And so for me, if you want to be determined to have a long-term, sustainable and scalable business that is in alignment with your authentic self, you have to be willing to slow down and pay attention to your actual core needs and desires and apply awareness to these purposeful plans. You've got to be purposeful about that plan from the get-go, and even once it's done, to see where the follow-through was in both the activities and your energy.
Preach, girl. Seriously, no, this is like so in line with like everything I believe and talk about all the time. So I love the way that you framed that, because I think it's really important. Like, it's just kind of like, how there's so many self-help books and there's all of these different things. And if you notice, it's really kind of like same sort of topic, right? But it's packaged a little bit differently because everyone is going to hear it when it's right for them. Like, you know what I mean? And so that's why I think it's so important to really sort of lean into that and dig into that with different coaches in different spaces and talk about this self-awareness in very specific ways, because what I say might not land for some people, and what you say might actually like hit them over the head. And I love that self-awareness aspect of it is so important, because a lot of people, I think a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of women in general tend to, like you said, we try and logic our way out of a lot of things. And, I work with a lot of creative entrepreneurs, and that creative brain, the overactive brain, whatever you want to call it, neurospicy, that's a big hallmark of it, is that overthinking and the analysis paralysis and that constant like logic. But what really matters is getting back in, like inside. It's an internal job, like you said. And I always talk about, all of these things that I use. Like, I always pull a human design chart for my clients, and I have a degree in psychology. So it's always going to be like my baseline is like, okay, let me see, who are you really deep down, like your soul's purpose? Like what is really your messaging and your belief system? All of that really matters, I believe, when I'm coaching someone. And I always tell people that it's just another tool in your self-awareness tool belt. Like, imagine yourself with, a tool belt on, and this is just a piece of it, because I think a lot of people do go into their business. At least I see a lot of this is, kind of diving into something because you're good at it. Somebody told you you were good at it, or you have an inkling for it, and you just kind of dive in and you have no idea like what you're doing, because that was me. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to run a business. I was the mom of 3 kids with a degree in psychology, and I was a massage therapist. And all of a sudden I'm a photographer, right? And people are like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? So I had to like teach myself not only the photography part, but teach myself this business part. And I found out so much about myself, and I'm such a big believer in therapy, obviously, as well. So I'm glad that you touched on that, because although I'm not a therapist, that's one of the reasons why I went back and got certifications in life coaching, is because these people were coming to me, these women were coming to me with their business issues, and we were digging into their business, but it was really about what was coming out, right? Like, so, and I tell that to people all the time, like you said, if you're not in alignment, if you're not doing what lights you up, and if you're exhausting all your energy, you are like, just laying yourself on, the hot coals, and everybody else is getting fed, but that's going to show up in your business, and you got to be preemptive about that. So I really love that whole conversation. I could talk about that all day. But what are some things that help you become like more self-aware? I know you mentioned therapy. Are there other things that you do that, of course, like, always have to ask about a little bit about the woo, right? Like, so are there any woo-woo practices that you do, or that you help your clients sort of discover? in that process?
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question. I mean, because here's the thing is it is about finding different tools. Just like you said, we're all kind of saying the same thing often, but we have different life experiences. And so my life experience might resonate with somebody else that has something similar in their background versus yours, right? And so it doesn't matter as long as you're getting it from somewhere. And so I love looking into different things and trying on different things to see what is in alignment. I mean, when I first read My Human Design and learned about it for the first time, I was like, I have never felt more seen in my entire life. Like, this is me.
Same.
Right? So it makes sense as to why I am a multi-passionate entrepreneur. And I also know that I have to rein myself in. I got to give myself room to like try something on and then be okay when I'm ready to let it go. Now, how can I pay attention to awareness around how do I know if I want to really try it on or when it's time to let it go? Well, some of those tangible things is, I mean, I journal regularly because to me, I feel like journaling is going to get out that under the surface stuff without the, overthinking. That's why I love to do it. Like, I mean, I have an iPad Pro, but I still need a pencil. Like, I'm not going to be typing my journaling because I feel like it just comes out of your hand without you thinking about it. And it gives you a really good way for you to slow down and reread and go back to see like, wow, here's where the journey was. Now, and another aspect that was life-changing for me is Marie Forleo has her book, Everything is Figure Outable. She talks about an exercise in this book. How can you tell what is fear versus like your intuition, your gut feeling, like a true yes? And there's an exercise in that I have since, put to practice, but also tweaked. And she really talks about just getting centered with your body. Well, obviously to do that, you have to slow down, take some breath work, do some deep breaths. And I can't remember exactly how she positions it in the book, but the way I do it is, just sitting, taking really deep breaths, 3-4 deep breaths where you can feel your shoulders rise and fall. And your hands, I have them palms up on my thighs. You want to be able to feel your feet on the ground, your butt in the seat, and you're going to ask yourself, does the saying yes to this make me feel excited and expansive? Does it make me feel tight and contracted? And whatever your body's reaction is in that exact moment, that's your intuition. That's your gut, y'all. Don't let logic in your head rule that out. And for me, what that physically feels like is oftentimes my hands will open up a little bit more, right? I will feel this, my shoulders will just kind of like open and fall even more. If it feels, my arms will come tightened into my body maybe, or my hands might tighten up. I will feel it somewhere in my back or my shoulders.
I know how overwhelming and paralyzing social media planning can be for creatives. So I really would love for you to check out a tool that I've been using for the past year and a half at least. And it makes it all so simple. Plus, they have everything you possibly could need and then some. It's called Metricool, and you could find it at renee.io/Metricool. So it's renee.io/METRICOOL. renee.io/Metricool. I love them because they're always adapting and changing and adding to it. So not only can you plan all your social media content across multiple platforms, you can also look at all your analytics, including your blog analytics. It's really, really amazing. Saves me a lot of time, gives me a lot of insight. So I'd love for you to check them out and let me know what you think about them.
These are the things. Now, mind you, I've gone against this in the past, and it's definitely proven, like I've got my own data that I'm writing. It's definitely proven that I should have gone with that initial feeling. So those are a couple of like tangible things that you can be doing. But additionally, I have a 5-step alignment process that I can apply to anything from why am I feeling so like reactive on my kid, over this homework thing or this car issue or whatever, to planning out an event or hiring somebody. And so, the 5 steps in a nutshell, really it's going to be, first, you got to visualize it. What would be ideal for me right now? How is that going to play out in terms of what's my ideal scenario, right? And then it's about connecting with yourself to really check in to say, let's go deeper with that. Not just a visualization, but going deeper to see what would that do for me? You know, how's that going to impact me? How's that going to change my life? How's that going to change this moment? You know, then it's validating it. This is a crucial step. If we don't validate whatever feelings come up, because I think especially as women, sometimes we get stuck in the black and white and we forget that two emotions can exist at the same time. So you can be feeling really frustrated, but also be feeling kind of fearful, nervous, or feeling frustrated and wanting a different outcome. Both of those things are true, and we need to acknowledge that. We need to make space for that. If you're feeling it, it's a real feeling, honey. Doesn't matter if it makes sense or not. If somebody else tells us that we shouldn't be feeling that way, it's a real feeling. And then once we can acknowledge it and validate it, well, now we can come up with a strategy, right? So if we're coming up with a strategy around what feels right, what do I need in this moment? What's the one thing that I can do that's going to move me closer to that ideal space? Do I need to communicate something? Is it a boundary that's being overstepped and I need to communicate effectively how to fix this? Or is it, I need to do some research. I need to find a coach. Maybe I should try therapy. What's the one thing I can research that's going to move me closer to that? And then it's going to be reflecting, because once we put a strategy and some action plan into place, we need to reflect to see if it really is in alignment. Again, we may not know what we don't know until we know it. So you might do this event and then do your feedback form and realize this wasn't right for me. Or you might find that it is, because our lives, as we continue to move on, our seasons change. And when your seasons change, your goals might pivot, your strategies might shift, and that's okay. And so really this is a cycle. It's not like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'm done. It's a cycle. And the more that you practice it, the easier it becomes. What might have taken you a few days before to process might take you a few minutes, and you can do it instantaneously. And so I think that sometimes it's about starting. You have to start somewhere to pay attention to what your actual needs are, or when you're feeling overwhelmed or pressured or feeling triggers, like take time, pause. We've got to dive into this. Y'all, stress and cortisol, it ain't going to be pretty. It's not helping you out for the long term. So how do we reduce that? How do we eliminate it as much as we can? Well, it's by slowing down to recognize what the actual cause is. So that way we can either prevent it, that we can communicate it and maybe shift it, or that we can at least validate that this is a real feeling and I'm feeling this. And that's okay, because I can feel that, but I can also want to move forward. So what do I need to do to move forward? And I think that that's a huge aspect that women, sometimes we get caught up in all the things that we have to do, and we don't know to slow down enough for ourselves.
Oh my gosh, that's the truth. I definitely get it. I mean, I've been there, you know what I mean? Like I definitely fell into that.
Oh yeah, we all have.
Especially as a young mom, totally falling into I've got to be, at every PTA meeting, and I've got to do this. And I'm a human design generator. I am built to do, right? But like one of my main things in learning about all that has been really honoring the fact that, okay, does this really light me up? And like you said, tuning into your body, I think so many people just kind of either forget about, don't know about, gloss over, like whatever. It's something that, a lot of people don't remember. That's like our most, I think, valuable tool. And I don't know, maybe it's because I was a massage therapist for a long time. And I went to a very, very hippy dippy massage therapy school, like back in the 90s in LA. It was very, very woo woo, right? But it was all about the mind body connection. And that's why I chose that school, because I was really drawn to that work. Back in the day, I had like these grand visions of someday combining like psychology with body work. Now they totally do it. Like it's somatic experiencing. I was like, I had that idea. But I didn't do anything with it. And, it's just one of those things where I think it's amazing. Like some somatic therapy and somatic experiencing and all of that stuff is so powerful. But we have the tools, like we can tune into our body. We don't really, yes, it's amazing to get help and to like really have someone help you walk through it, just like it is with coaching or anything else. but you have the tools. Like all you have to do is have that desire. And like you said, take that first step and realize that, okay, I can trust myself. And learning how to trust yourself, especially if you have a history of trauma or of any kind of, your needs not being met or being ignored or whatever that is. Like we all have our stories, and some are far more traumatic than others. So I do feel like there's so much empowerment though in helping people see that and helping people realize that tuning into your body. And like you said, the journaling, there's scientific proof that shows when you sit there with pen to paper, even if it's a pen to iPad, it's getting it out in a very different way than typing or even talking, whatever it is. There's a different mechanism at work there. And it really does help clear all of that overthinking. So I'm really glad you brought that up too. It's all really, really good points. But there's a lot of misconceptions too. I feel like, out there basically about, that people have about aligning their strategies with their true selves, and maybe they'll lose a piece of themselves, or, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of, like you said, fears that come up. So what are some tips that you can share that you've helped clients either worked on or in your own life, kind of breaking through some of those misconceptions and doing it anyway, basically?
Yeah. I mean, here, I can give you, I love examples because I feel like it is going to paint the picture, right, of how it's actually applied in your life, not just conceptually. So my bread and butter core business truly though is real estate. So that has been my first business, my core business. And when you think about realtors, I mean, I still have friends and colleagues who will put out on social media a review from a client, and it says, "Oh, I just loved, she was so great. She was available 24/7, anytime we needed anything." And I look at it and I'm like, ugh, I'm like, who wants to be available 24/7? And let me tell you, the ones that want to take advantage of the 24/7 are definitely the ones that you don't want to take advantage of it. Right.
Yeah.
And it was the summer of 2020, go figure. June, May and June, that spring season, just after lockdown came out, I was working with 5 different divorcing couples at the same time. One of which was a family member, one of which was a neighbor and a friend. So 5 divorcing couples at the same time. I was getting beat up, like they're like putting all of their pain and frustration in my direction because they've been doing it at each other for so long. So what happened is I started realizing like I cannot sustain this. Not to mention, I also started my own marriage therapy. So my marriage therapy was on Tuesday evenings, and I had a client, and after marriage therapy, my energy is so low. The last thing I can do is work with you in your crap in your house, right? I might be really good at it, but I am not going to show up my best self. And I had a client, one of these divorcing couples who was my friend and neighbor, who was just blowing my phone up via text saying like, I need you to be available. It was like 8:00 at night, and I didn't have the energy. And finally I just texted her and I said, friend, I'm going to take my realtor hat off for a moment and put my friend hat on and just be open and honest with you. We've started marriage therapy, and that is on Tuesdays. I cannot show up this evening. I promise you will get my best self tomorrow morning. I hope you can understand as my friend, right? And what I realized was, do I actually want to be available at 8:00 at night? Do I want to work 7 days a week? What other business owner is working 7 days a week? You don't get your attorney 7 days a week at 8:00 at night most times. You don't get your dentist 7 days a week at 8:00 at night most times. I mean, maybe they exist, but at the same time, like, how am I going to carve out intentional time to be present with my kid if I'm always available, if I'm always on call? You're always having your phone nearby. You are not present. Listen, that really became obvious to me in marriage therapy, that part of why I'm in marriage therapy is I haven't been super present in my relationships. So July 1st, 2020, I changed my voicemail, and I put right on my voicemail, if you've reached me after 7 p.m. or on a Sunday or on a holiday, I will return your call the next business day. So I started setting expectations with every client that I met with to let them know. Now, I have leverage I have showing assistants. I understand that Sundays are often days that people want to see homes. I get that. I have assistants to help you with that. We will help make sure that you get into the home that you want to see. But I am not available to show homes to you. If we are negotiating an offer or we have a deadline, I will make an exception to the 7 o'clock rule. But what I found is setting expectations is going to reduce frustrations. And here's the thing. Not a single time have I had anybody say, you know what, I don't think that you're the right agent for us because we need somebody that's going to be available 24/7. Nobody has said that. And if they had, I can tell you right now, they wouldn't have been my ideal client anyways. Our values don't match up. Instead, what people say to me is, good for you. You need to carve out time for you and your family. I've even had clients that I've called when I'm on the West Coast, because we live on the East Coast. I'm on vacation, but we have an emergency come up that my assistant reaches out to me and says, we need to get in touch with them. Like, this is a big deal. Do you want us to do it or do you want to do it? And I call them, and first thing he says, Jamie, you're on vacation. Why are you calling us? Right? Like,
Yep.
Because I set these expectations and I create boundaries that allow me to be present, some agents will think like, no, I have to be available 24/7. Don't get me wrong. Did I do that my first year in the business? No. I mean, I did what every entrepreneur is going to do. I picked up the phone all the time. I was always working so that I could secure enough revenue and income so that I could kind of earn my way into this place. Now, if you have small children or if you have schedules that you are having to balance all the time, like, you don't necessarily have that privilege to be able to create, to be able to be available. You might need to create those boundaries. What are your non-negotiables that is going to keep you filled? Because if you're drained, newsflash, you're not giving your best self to your clients either. How do you keep yourself filled? So oftentimes, I think that if we just set expectations, we would be surprised at how much people will respect them and honor them. And those that won't honor them, I mean, people will leave me a voicemail and ask me to call them back, even though it's 7:30. Or sometimes they will leave me a voicemail and say, hey, know that it's after 7:30. Don't worry about this until tomorrow. Just wanted to get the message across, right? And sometimes they leave a message, hey, give me a call back whenever you get a second. I get a second tomorrow morning.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a second to call you back tonight. Again, we can be flexible in this. This doesn't have to be rigid and black and white. Sometimes there are exceptions to the rules, whatever your business might be. But we have to check in with ourselves to say, what do we need that is going to keep me at my highest self so that I can show up and serve the people that are hiring me, but also the people that I really want to be in relationship with, that love me, that I care about, so that I can show up my best self for them as well. Because it's not fair to them to get the most drained version of you either.
Yep. 100%. Yeah. As a photographer, you'd be surprised. Now, I definitely have a lot of realtor friends and clients, so I totally know what you're talking about. But even with photography, you'd be surprised at how many photographers are literally at the beck and call of their clients. They feel like they've got to answer their DMs at 8 or 9 o'clock at night. They've got to return even emails. One of the best things I ever did was put an autoresponder on my email that says, I will return my emails on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. If there's an emergency, you can text me. I can't promise you I'm going to get back to you right away because I might be shooting. I might be doing, you know what I mean? I might be in a meeting, whatever. But I will get back to you within, 24 to 48 hours.
I love a schedule send.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing is, just because I tell you that I'm not available after 7 p.m. does not mean that there aren't times that I have extra availability, in my own life, that I might not have my laptop out.
Exactly.
But here's the thing. You teach people how to treat you. So if you're going to set this expectation and this boundary and you're not going to honor it yourself or communicate why you are bending, in this moment, that you are being flexible. Because I do every time. I'm like, hey, I know that it's past hours, but we really need to handle this right now.
Yeah.
So I set the tone for what an emergency is, but using a schedule send for an email that's why I love automation and just workflows, because that leverage allows me to continue to work on my terms.
Yep.
So if I want to be working or if I'm in a different time zone, I can do that, but I can schedule for that to go back out to my client in the hours instead of if I send it at 10 o'clock at night, well, what message is that sending to my client? Oh, well, she says that she's not working, but she's sending us an email, so it's a matter of, again, setting expectations, but also honoring them yourself.
That communication, just communication in general, is so important. Like you said, even, obviously in our personal relationships, but our business relationships, that communication is so important because people will treat you the way that you allow them to, but also they will treat you unless you tell them, unless you actually set those expectations up front, and not just to this in this realm of boundaries that we're talking about, but also in what they can expect from you, right? Depending on what kind of business you run, letting people know up front that you've got it. Here's the system. Here's the process. This is what it's going to look like. I've got this, and here's how it's going to go. Right. But knowing how to do that up front, that's some things when you're new at whatever you're doing, you don't know this. This is a major thing that you find out from those mistakes, right? It's usually because you are exhausted and you have gotten burnout or whatever it is. And you realize, oh my God, I've got to put some boundaries in place or whatever it is. So that's why there's so much power in working with a mentor, being in a peer group, whatever it is, because you can learn from other people's mistakes, quote unquote, like this, their information, their learning.
Failing forward.
Exactly. Their feedback. You can learn so much faster than, doing it on your own. And so there's a lot of empowerment in there, but there's so much gold in actually hearing that. So I'm glad that you also brought those points up, because I think there's a lot of people who do listen to this podcast who are just sort of starting out, and they are still learning some of these things. So some of that is part of your journey, but some of it you can sidestep it. Some of it you can actually, figure that out faster than we do.
That's right. Fail forward faster, baby. Fail forward faster.
Exactly. So tell everybody where they can find you. What's your preferred social media platform? I'll list everything in the show notes as well. But where do you like to connect with people best?
So whatever platform they are listening to, tried and true with a dash of woo, you can just go to the search bar and search for Determined AF. That's my podcast. I mean, we're doing the same thing. We're having conversations about awareness and alignment, especially for female entrepreneurs, because I want you to learn how to practice and apply awareness so that you can align your systems and strategies with your true inner desires and needs. Okay. So we always include tons of different freebies in our show notes. I've got guest speakers as well that come on, very similar. So bite size, you can run it on, on your drive to work or wherever your next appointment is. Additionally, my website, jamiemilam.com. In fact, I'll be happy to share with you, we have a free self-awareness mastery guide, which is also like a workbook. So it's going to help step you through these different aspects, which you can apply to, just in general, everyday life, or whether it's a business idea, to try to find some alignment there. And then Instagram, I mean, I'm on and off with Instagram. So again, that's my alignment thing, but it's Ms. Jamie Milam.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay. I'll list all of that there so people can find you, and you guys definitely go check out that freebie because that sounds awesome. Thank you so much for being here. This was a really awesome conversation. I knew it would be. I knew that, we sort of align in many, many different ways. So it was just great chatting with you.
Absolutely. Thanks again for having me, Renee.
Whoa, such a great conversation with Jamie. Thank you again so much for being here. And all of her information and that freebie are going to be in the show notes, so definitely check that out. Some of the things that you can walk away as takeaways from this episode are how important practicing that deep self-awareness really is. And all the different ways that you can do it, it has to look really good for you. It has to feel really good for you. And learning how to tune in with your body is so important. Also, strategic systems absolutely work. Setting boundaries for yourself, valuing yourself. People are going to treat you the way that you tell them to, that you allow them to. So making sure that you have all of your client expectations outlined and communicated up front is key. And lastly, using Jamie as an example, as someone who has overcome so much to run 3 successful businesses and, go on to live a deeply fulfilling life, you can do this too. So no matter where you are in your journey, there is help for you, and make sure that you are accessing everything around you that you possibly can. You can't get help unless you ask for it. And there's so much out there, and there is a lot for free. So even if you're in a position where you can't afford a high-level coach or one-on-one, there are other opportunities for you around. So reach out. If I don't have the answers for you, I will find someone who does. And thank you as always for listening. If you guys love the podcast, please head over to ratethispodcast.com/Renee Bowen and leave us a review. It is so easy. You can even just leave a rating in one click. The whole system is super easy. It's going to take you probably 5 to 10 seconds. And I really, really appreciate it. So please head over there and get that done for me today, please. I hope you guys have a phenomenal rest of your week, and I'll talk soon. Photographers, do any of these sound familiar? You want to make money, but it feels impossible. You have a lot of ideas, but you struggle with the implementation, and you get stuck in the details and you overthink. You're not alone, and I believe this is part of your genius, okay? You're a creative. Isn't it time to lean into your superpowers instead of viewing them as limitations? Isn't it time to finally feel supported by others like you and a trained coach who knows how to get you to that next level? It's time for you to take action in your business, and you can do it with Elevate, my group coaching program, for only $49 a month. Head over to renee.io/elevated with a D at the end to find out more and to sign up.